Walk through the Esplanade Park on any given day of the week, and you'll be struck by what a quiet place it is. Old trees, old monuments, a definite air of old age, and perhaps a sense of having been left behind in the fast pace of Singapore life. But if you could go back in time, say 50 years or more, you'd discover that the Esplanade Park was a place full of life. And it was certainly not forgettable.
You can watch the work at the busy waterfront and see the lighters going in and out of the Singapore River, loading or unloading the ships in the roads. Or you can stroll, quietly taking in the sea breezes. But if you want to do this, choose a time when it's high tide. You'll find the air much pleasanter then. The area is beautifully landscaped with plants and flowers, and there are lots of seats to rest on.
When we know more about our past, I think it adds a lot more meaning to what we do at the moment. What we can learn about the past can be found from the places that we come to know better, like the Padang, Elizabeth Walk. To me, it was a place of wonderful childhood memories. After work, my father would drive us there. I was with 3 other sisters, my mother, and we'll have a wonderful evening.
I was schooling in St. Joseph's Institution, commonly known as SJI. And the Esplanade Park was very close to the school.
We'll chase one another down the walk. And when we cross the Padang, there are all these funny shapes that we see.
I will go there in the afternoon where it's very quiet. There used to be a hawker center there. Then I will sit in one of the stalls and do my studies right after the evening.
I asked my dad, what are those toads or frogs, all over the Padang? He wouldn't reply us. When we grew up, we realized that these were couples, courting couples on the Padang.
Because there's a very good venue for all these couples, facing the sea, cool breeze, nice to talk to your partner, or maybe submit proposals also, I think, there.
But it was a place for promenading, yeah. I think my parents used to do it, I think.
One other thing I like to remember about the Esplanade was the fountain.
How many of us know the story behind the Tan Kim Seng Fountain, which is between the Cenotaph and the Esplanade restaurant off Connaught Drive?
In later years, I worked along Kim Seng Road at Times House. But it never connected. Yeah, that was the Tan Kim Seng.
In November 1857, Mr. Tan, who was a great philanthropist and civic worker, gave the government $13,000, which was a considerable sum of money in 1857, to bring a good supply of fresh water to Singapore. But nothing was done with the money until after he died. A serious drought in 1862 forced the government to sanction work on a fresh water project. But Mr. Tan's money was all frittered away and wasted by the government engineer, who, it is said, tried to make water run uphill through the water pipes. Then, possibly out of shame, the municipal commissioners built the fountain in 1882, 20 years after Mr. Tan Kim Seng had died. It first stood in Fullerton Square between the present General Post Office and the Hong Kong and Shanghai Bank. There was no parking problem then in Fullerton Square. Later, the fountain was moved to its present site.
But now it's all changed in a bit, but still, there are some sense there, especially along the park you walk, you still can see the Anderson Bridge. There's a beautiful view with the Fullerton building behind.
The other thing I remember is this cenotaph, with the steps leading up and the different years written on the steps. Somehow there was this sense of almost trepidation. It's not that the dead were buried there, but somehow we wanted to honor them, and we didn't think it was right to go up the steps.
On Thaipusam night, there will be fireworks, which everybody will go to the Esplanade, to the riverside to watch. Just shown out in the ocean, in the sea. And that was an occasion it's a festive occasion.
The sea breeze, something that you don't have to buy, it's free. And when Papa carries us and puts us on the parapet with our feet dangling down, the excitement, a slight danger of falling over, and you see the waves lapping against the seawalls. To us, that was the sea. Yeah? Only now I realize that's the river, not the sea.
Nearby is the memorial to patriot and martyr Lim Bo Seng. It's been called a monument of outstanding beauty, which has an oriental touch and adds something of ancient China to the beautiful Esplanade scenery.
They used to say that Chap Gome, there's this story that if you want to get a husband or you want to get married, you've got to throw oranges into the river off the bridge. You know, and that was where they used to throw oranges.
Remember this kacang putih man lifting down his tray of nuts and beans? We will choose our favorites. Mine was the white kacang putih, nuts coated with sugar. And my sisters would sometimes choose the beans, chickpeas, chickpeas, and sometimes we'll have ice cream on a cone, sometimes with bread, and all these will just give us hours of fun.
And at the back, the hawker center, there used to be the satay stalls, and they call it the satay club.
I mean, it's such a sexy name, isn't it?
I remember also going there. It was very difficult to get a seat.
In fact, the whole place, there was such a festive air.
And there was big competition because there's so many satay stalls there.
You can just imagine that scene. It's low lights, not very brightly lit. Everybody sitting on low stools, swirling smoke all over the shop. The smell of all the barbecued meat, and it was always crowded. There were few eating out places then, you know, and Satay Club was like top of a lot of people's lists, you know. They would offer you a big platter of different kinds of satays.
The Chinese type actually has fatty meat in between, whereas the Malay type is just pure meat, no fat. Which do I prefer? Probably the Chinese one. You know why? They had pineapple sauce together with the peanut sauce, whereas the Malay type, you only have the peanut sauce. And you ask for second helpings, of course, of the pineapple sauce.
You have to buy in bulk, you know, either 50s or 30s. You cannot just order a few sticks at a time, you know.
And these satay men, they're very trusting. They'll give you a whole tray full, a plate full of satay, different flavors, with the rice, the ketupat, and the cucumber.
And you picked up whichever ones you wanted to eat and you ate it, but you have to keep the sticks because afterwards they will go around and count.
They'll start counting the sticks that were left on the table.
And they'll charge you accordingly.
For all you know, some people could throw the sticks away, right? But somehow, I guess we learn to be truthful then. We don't do such things.
And even before that, the satay stalls were behind the Shaw Center. I used to go there when I was school, you know, behind the Shaw Center, and the sea was just behind. I used to go with the family, eat satay, and there were some small boats, you know, they were tied to the rope, tied to the poles there. So what we did, my brother and myself, we went and threw the ropes away so the boat floated out.
If food played a central role in our experience of the Esplanade Park, so too did art. The first Singapore Art Fair was held at the Esplanade Park, a bold venture far ahead of its time, which drew excited and inspired crowds.
And Singapore artists had a wonderful time as more than 50 of them joined together to put on their informal and friendly show. Artists turned up hours before opening time to get the best sights. There were no reserved places. The first day the weather was perfect and a large Sunday afternoon crowd gathered to watch the show. The organizing committee chairman, Dr. Lu Min Tek, had 2 of his own paintings on display. Dr. Lu's other hobby is growing roses. Lim Nam Seng, reckoned by many to be Singapore's foremost sculpturist, had several of his works on display. These batik paintings are by Lim Xiao Cheng. Mr. Lee Man Fong exhibited his painting of the National Theatre. A very special attraction was the on-the-spot demonstration by the very well-known artist Lim Yu Kwang, who chose the busy waterfront for his subject. He was watched by a most attentive audience. These open-air exhibitions give a much wider public an opportunity to see and to learn to appreciate the paintings and sculptures of our talented Singapore local artists.
And the music, whether it was in the hotels or in the parks, drew happy souls.
Okay, the ballroom of Raffles Hotel was opened 21st January 1921. And that ballroom was the venue for dancers. And remember, we were in the British colony, so a lot of the British came to dance in the lobby. And imagine in the weather here, and yet they came full dress with the tuxedos, and they would dance in the lobby, cheek to cheek, holding hands. And this was something new for the locals here. So they saw this, the locals would line up along the ballroom just to watch the British dancing. And what they had, a lot of foreign bands coming here, like Joe Spillman, the longest jazz-serving band in the Raffles Hotel, and Dan Hawkins and his bands. So a lot of these foreigners were coming in because they heard about Raffles, and they wanted to come and play in this famous hotel.
While that was the lifestyle of the influential and wealthy, the need for musicians drew people from around the region and Europe who wanted to live and work here.
The Raffles, Seaview, Hotel de la Europe, Adelphi and Oriental hotels were the leading establishments that engaged bands or individual musicians, mainly from Goa, the Philippines, and Europe. Work in the hotels was never permanent, and they worked on either a full-time or part-time basis. As Roman Catholics, the musicians naturally found themselves drawn to play a part in the service of the church, where Mass was still being sung in Latin.
And slowly, the local bands wanted to take over. And under the baton of Jerry Suriano, a Filipino, he came and he played in the ballroom for many, many years. So this became a venue, really, for the British to have dance. And the band used to play even just before the surrender of Singapore, and the people were still dancing and merrymaking. And this was the hotel to come to at those days.
The Singapore Police Band was formed in 1929 and was made up of Sikh bandsmen from the forces in colonial India. As these musicians finally retired in Singapore, their relatives from British bands in India came here in search of further employment. These retirees grouped themselves into small brass bands to play selections from the repertoire they had known. Soon they were in great demand for Chinese funerals to send off the dead in triumph. The wailing of the accompanying professional mourners egged on the Sikh bandsmen into competition. The band's rendition shifted into higher brassy gears to the great satisfaction of the relatives of the departed, who were happy to be getting their money's worth. Thus, the relatively peaceful atmosphere of a Sunday morning would suddenly be shattered by "Happy Days Are Here Again" at an intensity of decibels, fortunately modified by the open air and the moving away of the lorry carrying the band's men. Everyone was happy.
This is where the history of cricket in Singapore originated. A lot of the other sports were played on this ground: hockey, lawn tennis, bowls. You had netball and softball and football and rugby. So this really was a mecca for Singapore sports. Turning out here was, you had a piece of history with you, and you could actually just envisage this entire area about 150 years behind. And when I first started playing, there wasn't a tall building around here in sight.
There were only 2 turf pitches. The rest of them were mostly matting, covered with matting and all that, which was a sort of a second-class game.
It was a real treat to turn out in the Padang, playing on either of these wickets, the recreation club or the cricket club.
SCC was bastion of the Europeans. Unlike today, only Europeans were allowed inside. So even to get to play on that was akin to playing at Lord's, which to any cricketer, world cricketer, playing at Lord's is the height of fame almost, or his ambition.
During a lot of these matches, there was some big hitting of the cricket ball, and a lot of the balls ended up falling into the sea because the sea was just behind this memorial here. And a lot of the cricket balls also ended up going to St. Andrew's Cathedral, the steps of the City Hall. Many a taxi driver has driven away in shock after the ball has hit them. It was really hilarious, but it comes with a turf. Cricket is not a safe game. It can be quite dangerous.
Free entertainment was largely an outdoor activity for all ethnic communities, and the Esplanade Park became a symbol of that for so many.
Back in the old days, an evening out was a night out at the Wayang. I only remember that it was very loud, noisy, very festive, very joyous, very colorful, and there were lots and lots of food stalls surrounding it. You can find the Cheng Tun stall, the Ngoh Hiang stall, the Olwat stall. Those were my favorites. I don't know whether there was char kway teow or not, you know, but most of them, if you think of it, they are sort of fairly dry food and sort of takeaway food. They were all dressed in glittery clothes, okay? And it was amazing because you could recognize your taugeh seller suddenly appearing on stage. You know, at one moment, he was just wearing singlet and shorts and whatever, and suddenly he came out decked in this wonderful, glorious costume full of glitter, a lot of sequins, and with a colored face. Either pink or white or black, you know, it was fantastic stage makeup. So it's quite exciting to see that transformation. And this was like quite highfalutin Hokkien, I think. And they would perform traditional operas with traditional songs. The orchestra was, it was Chinese orchestra, and some people would sing along with it. I went there for the food, actually. I guess for the spectacle. Every now and then I look up, you know, there's this colorful spectacle on stage, brightly lit. There wasn't any mood lighting, so to speak. Everything was really bright and, you know, and garish. So it was in-your-face entertainment.
You do get a bit nostalgic about the old days, but I must say that I pretty much like what's happened here. You know, at night, especially when the lights are on, when you come and take a walk around this civic area here, it's so beautiful. And it does make me very much proud when I actually watch this entire area being covered during the F1 races. It's really nice.
Memories of the Esplanade, of Elizabeth Walk, the Padang, all these are precious because they are memories of what went on before Singapore became what it is today. I lament that we have torn down too much of our past. And what we see now around us, all these tall buildings, grand-looking facades, they look grand, but I'm afraid the soul seems to be missing. And I like to think that if we revive a little of what we had in the simpler days of Singapore, it might just do our younger generation some good to realize that it's not just all the handphones and gadgets and iPads and whatnot that make life interesting, but simple joys like a windy night out with the family, with the siblings whom you can trust, with parents whom you know are always there for you, and you in turn grow up to hopefully be there for your younger ones.